Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Kris Sims, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, her website, taxpayer.com. Welcome back to the show, Kris.
Thank you so much.
Kris, a CMHC UBC study says the federal government should be taxing home sales. Don't we pay enough property tax already? Why do they want to tax our homes when we sell them? And there's also transfer fees and so on. Yeah, so darn good question. So this all blew up a couple of weeks ago because it turns out that Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC, is putting about $250,000 into a research study in conjunction with a group out of UBC here in British Columbia. What's interesting is one of the items that they would be seriously considering for their study is, you nailed it, a tax on the sale of your principal residence. So what that means is the house you're living in right now, when you sell it, you would then be mega taxed on it, like as a form of income tax. Right now, you're only taxed on your sales of homes if you are a wheeler and dealer in real estate, if you're selling secondary residences, other houses you might happen to own. I know for a lot of us here in BC, that seems like a pipe dream to own just one of them. So it right now doesn't apply to your current house, your primary residence. And a lot of people, especially seniors, are banking on that. That is their nest egg. Selling that house that they're living in right now as they go to downsize is what will make or break their financial futures. And so when we caught wind of this trial balloon through UBC and CMHC being floated, we sounded the alarm right away. We launched a petition. We sent out a news release. We did a lot of interviews on it. And what's interesting is the federal government very quickly, including Bill Morneau, said, oh, no, we're not planning on having a tax on the sale of your principal residences. But a quasi-government organization like CMHC is pouring $250,000 into a study based on it. And you have to also report to Canada Revenue Agency when you do sell your principal residence. They're not taxing you on it yet. They still want to know what you sold it for, though. So why are they asking if they're not planning on taxing us on it eventually? So it's definitely something to keep your eye on. Well, if they plan to tax your principal residence when it's sold, then in other jurisdictions where they do that, then you can do things like deduct your mortgage interest and the cost of repairs to maintain that capital object.
Exactly. In the many jurisdictions in the United States, you're able to write off big chunks of interest on the mortgage you're paying. It's, treated like a form of an investment. Totally different system up here in Canada. And would we trust the government to adopt that kind of tax deduction while we're busy living in the homes we're working so hard to pay for? No, because the government is going to be very, very hungry for income really soon, because we're headed to $1 trillion debt within the next 6 months. We literally don't have enough room left on the Canadian Taxpayers Federation debt clock. We're going to have to tape a 1 next to it. So we've got a wounded government that is deep in debt. They're going to be looking for cash under the couch cushions. So this is why we need to tell people right now, make sure you speak up and tell your member of parliament, keep your hands off the sale of my home if you don't want this tax.
You may recall when Jean Chrétien was the prime minister, he suggested taxing lottery wins, and it was pointed out to him, the lotteries are run by the government. They already keep 40% of the money. Why do you want to claw back more?
Exactly, and they may not have even realized that. So just keep in mind, as you pointed out, of all the property taxes we're already paying on our homes, and all the fees and the levies and the stuff that goes into it. I mean, last time we did a big study on this in Metro Vancouver, I think it was 102 or 103 different types of taxes, fees, and levies on homes in Metro Vancouver at various levels of government. So they got their hand in your pocket every time you turn around. The one last thing that they don't tax yet is the sale of literally the house you're living in. But they're eyeing it hard. And I'll put it this way. The group that CMHC is doing a study with, within UBC, in previous studies, they've characterized a lack of income tax on the sale of your primary home as a $7 billion cost to government. So it's almost assuming that the state and the government should tax and own by default. And when they don't, it's a loss to government. That should be ringing alarm bells.
Also, too, if they're going to be taxing your home, again, people would be buying homes for a whole different purpose than they do now, because the majority of home purchases, and I'm talking single detached, that's for a family. It's not for investment purposes. That would change the whole nature of the Canadian real estate scene, wouldn't it?
It really would. Anybody who at all has a passing interest in real estate will understand that. A lot of people will flip things and change homes. They'll do the big makeovers on different types of homes, but they usually do things like that with condos, townhouses, that sort of thing, apartments. And so that's where a lot of the investment income comes from, chalets or cottages, things like that. And again, it's all secondary. The house you're literally living in with your family has not been something that you're flipping over and over to make money off of. So the idea that they'd be eyeing that little nest egg that you're hanging on to your whole life in some cases and working hard to pay for your entire income earning time as an adult should be really alarming people. And so we're urging everybody, keep an eye on this file. Don't let the WE scandal or anything like that distract you. Keep an eye on it. And just because politicians say right now that they're not going to tax it doesn't mean that they won't in the future. Keep in mind, Jean Chrétien, as you previously mentioned, he largely campaigned on getting rid of Brian Mulroney's GST, and he didn't do it. He just kept it. So we have to keep an eye on these folks.
Also, if they're going to tax you on the sale of your principal property, I could see people adding an extra 10 or 20% to the cost of that sale to cover the tax. How does that help housing affordability, one of the big problems Canada has right now?
Yes, exactly. In many cases, my colleague, for example, Jasmine Moulton, who is the Ontario director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, just finished doing an article in the Financial Post, and she pointed out that because of all their different types of taxes, levies, and fees in just Toronto, that it was adding about $130,000 to the cost of a new condo. Just the government was doing that. So, of course, it makes housing affordability much more problematic. And I'll give you this as an example, and it's such a no-brainer. So when I got back to British Columbia, I was born and raised here, but I got back 3 years ago. I, of course, came into this constant cloud of, housing problems and how people couldn't find anywhere to live. And we had all these different government studies saying, with all these big government solutions, should government own a bunch of apartment buildings? What should we do? What should we do? And just last Christmas, the city of Vancouver legalized suites, meaning made your basement suite, those beautiful income suites people can build, legal. So instead of going with, the easiest solution first to ease the housing crisis and to free up some rental space for people who are trying to get into the market or just live, instead of doing that, they were looking at multi-million-dollar big government-controlled solutions. It's completely backwards.
Well, the city of Burnaby, too, I didn't realize until it was proposed that the condo complex that I lived in be raised and turned into a high-rise tower. The city expected to take a third of the money from that sale.
Yeah. See, I didn't know that either.
Yeah,
a lot of people don't realize the amount of involvement with government with housing. It's not just, they're not the innocent party here.
Yeah. So isn't that a 33%, isn't that a 33% tax?
That's a big load of dough is what that is. And you really need to keep an eye on it. A lot of people seem to give government the slip when it comes to housing. They don't realize that they're a big factor in it being so expensive.
I think it's also something, again, as the Taxpayers Federation has pointed out from day one, there's one taxpayer, but each level of government looks at you as a fresh piece of meat. that's never been touched before.
Yes, exactly. A lot of politicians at various levels don't realize that, but they need to. They need to understand that that taxpayer's wallet that they're eyeing is already being siphoned off, often in 3 or 4 different ways. And they need to understand that and back off. And again, if we're going to get through this crisis, they need to seriously curtail their spending. They must be relentless in separating needs and wants in every single level of government budgets, and then they need to really start working on recovery. They can't just start tapping the taxpayer again because they're tapped out.
We'll have more with Kris Sims right after this.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Kris Sims. Kris, the government plans to take the CERB, the emergency payment to people laid off because of the virus crisis, and merge it into the EI system where you have to have proof that you're looking for work. Have you run into small businesses that can't find employees? They all ran off after the virus scare shut things down, but they're not coming back.
Yes, we are, both professionally and anecdotally. So I'll get emails or phone calls from small businesses saying exactly this, where they will say, you know, I've reopened my business myself and I'm doing everything. I'm literally opening it in the morning and I'm closing it at night. I'm doing the books, I'm tending the bar, I'm mopping the floor, because I can't get employees to come back. Now, if you actually can't, if you are medically unable to, we understand. That is not who we're talking about here. We're talking about the folks who apparently have told their employers something like this. Oh yeah, I really like working for you, but I'm taking the summer off, so give me a call in September. Check back with me in September. We hear that from many corners. And so that is where we're saying, we need more checks and balances on this, and that's why we're pleased that they're reforming CERB so that it'll be much more similar to employment insurance. That means that it's there if you truly need it. That's what the safety net's there for. But you have to be active and willing to work, and you have to be looking for work. You can't just treat it as money forever. And I need to stress again, anybody who is collecting CERB, whether you absolutely fundamentally need it, and bless your heart if you do, or if you're one of those folks that's like, call me in September, you're going to be taxed on that. The money that went into your bank account or the money you got in that check has not had the taxes taken off yet. But Revenue Canada is going to come looking for that money in the spring. So you must bank a chunk of it or you're going to be behind the 8 ball.
Some countries have given people a mortgage holiday of a month or two for everyone, and you're not expected to make up that money to help out. Should Canada have done the same thing, or is a deferred mortgage good enough?
Good question. We think quite often that should be left between the lenders and the homeowners themselves, because when you get government involved, quite often they will slow up the works and muddy up the waters. We need only look at their payroll system at the federal government level. It's a computer program called Phoenix. They still haven't figured it out. They still have lots of employees that have either been not paid for years, literally for years, or overpaid by mistake. And so they have to do all this accounting themselves and wait for it to be fixed. So they can't even figure out how to run that software program for their own payroll, for their own employees properly. The notion that they would step in and somehow get the banks to all do this in unison, oh my goodness, that sounds like a disaster. So we know that they needed to get money out the door fast, and it was good they did, and they did that with CERB, and they did that with various forms of payment. But now, in order to get back to a new normal, as they call it, they need to start reforming it.
I'm also hearing from small business owners that they're having trouble accessing government assistance because the forms and the computer programs are so complicated. They don't have the time or the staff to go through all this red tape to get it. Again, shouldn't it be more like CERB, apply for it, and then wait for the rules to catch up?
It was too bad, eh? They should have taken the same approach in many cases for the small business owners as they were doing for the small business employees. Why was there much of a difference? And we have to keep in mind that small businesses, they're used to keeping books. They're used to doing all their taxes and all that stuff all the time. And so maybe they would have been better able to decide whether or not they needed it and to stay on the up and up. And yeah, we're hearing that as well. Sometimes these businesses don't quite qualify, and they frankly don't have time now to weave their way through that maze. We think going forward, what we need to remember is we need to stay open as safely as possible. The idea of trying to shut the economy down again and pull it to a screeching halt, just look at the damage that it's caused. And so as long as we can stay safe and healthy as possible, we need to keep things open and rolling.
Yeah, I must say in Canada, it appears that health officials have been listened to. They've got the virus. When they said flatten the curve, they didn't say we'll eliminate the virus. We don't want our hospitals overwhelmed. And we're seeing other jurisdictions where that's happened. So I think Canadian politicians, for the most part, have done the right thing and have stepped back and let the doctors do what they do because they're doctors. As we all know, there's two jobs in the world where you don't need a license, a permit, or an education to do it, and that's parent and politician. And there probably should be permits and training for both. But, I mean, they're the two most important jobs there are out there. Yeah. Politicians control everything, and parents influence the world.
I hadn't thought of it that way. That's kind of harrowing, isn't it? But yeah, you're right. We've got a lot of prominent and excellent public health officials who I think mostly people feel have done a very good job. And you're right. We need to remember that the entire purpose of this was to make sure the hospitals weren't overwhelmed. It wasn't to make sure there were never any cases ever. There's 8 people, as of this recording, there are 8 people in hospital in all of British Columbia, one of Canada's most populous provinces.
Third, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we're a big province, and there's 8 people in hospital, and we hope that they fully recover. So I think they've done a darn good job.
And Ontario's now had, I think, 3 days, on Ontario, 3 days in a row with fewer than 100 detected cases. So good on Doug Ford. And I know Doug's a very, very pro-business person, but again, he just said, I'm not a doctor. Let the doctors decide what to do. So, again, kudos across the country for doing the right thing, and people are being cautious. Now, you're a parent. How scared or concerned are you about the measures taken so far to get the kids back into school this fall?
That's a great question. Taking off my CTF hat and just speaking personally, I'm concerned about it, but I'm also encouraged because, knock wood, God forbid, it seems that children do quite well. It doesn't seem that it largely hits younger kids, say under the age of 14 or so, as hard as it does older people. So let's be thankful for that blessing. I am a little concerned about it because, like most kids, my kids can't seem to keep their hands out of their mouths. It just happens all the time. You're chewing your nails, you're rubbing your nose, you're rubbing your eye. You know, it's hard enough for we as adults to not do that. So the idea of sending my kids in and making sure they don't do it, I'm a little concerned about that because I also don't want, I think my kids would be fine, but I don't want my kids getting it and then infecting older members of my family who are in the at-risk groups, so folks over the age of 70, things like that. So I'm concerned. I'll probably be sending them to school with masks and a lot of hand sanitizer and a lot of hope.
We'll have more with Kris Sims right after this.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlan, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Kris Sims. Kris, we always like to talk about where government has done a good job of spending money and where they've done a poor job. We like Port Coquitlam and Delta that have help small businesses open patios and so on. You're not so keen on Surrey that's charging extraordinarily high fees for people to even just apply for a patio. But the federal government, now we know infrastructure is important, again, to get the economy going. But picturesque Gabriola Island between Vancouver Island and Vancouver, what have they got from the federal government that perhaps they don't need?
So from what we can tell, it looks like over $500,000, so more than $500,000, is being spent on a complex on Gabriel Island that includes a gigantic skateboard park. Now, I don't know about you, but I have some friends from Gabe, as they call it, and it doesn't seem to be the hot spot where a skateboard park would necessarily be needed for, say, the tens of thousands of gathered youth, to put it mildly. It doesn't seem like a fitting spot. And $500,000 is a lot of money to be spending, especially right now. As we're stressing, we're headed to $1 trillion debt. We must go through item by item through this budget and just separate wants and needs. This sure sounds like a want item, and they must stop blowing money like this. We had this very similar situation happen after the 2008 recession, where the federal government tried to juice the economy, and we wound up with, super snazzy deluxe roofs on every single curling club in every single small town, and brand new paved parking lots that didn't really need it. So you can wind up with almost a form of March Madness, where departments are trying to get rid of their annual budgets, or if they don't use it, they'll lose it. We can't have that mentality with government spending. So we're going to be taking a hard look at the spending that's going on right now on Gabe and figure out if that's really a good use of taxpayers' money.
Now we have places like Surrey, the fastest growing major city in North America, that canceled the building of recreation centers so they can bring in a municipal police force and dump the RCMP. Is that a place that perhaps could have used a new skateboard park to keep the kids out of the hands of criminal gangs?
Great point. And see, this is the sort of stuff that politicians campaign on, and they decide. And from what I could tell from the news media and the coverage, and the friends that I know who live in Surrey who have little kids and who go to hockey rinks, they were voting for that stuff. They were saying, hey, we, I think, are or close to the fastest growing municipality on the continent. So in Canada, the United States, Surrey is just booming. And a lot of them are working families. And so from what I could tell in the coverage, they were really asking for that. That's the kind of infrastructure spending they wanted. They voted for it. We're in a democracy. And yet we'll see that cancellation. And on the other side of the coin, with a different level of government funding, they'll blow $500,000 on a skateboard park and recreation spot on Gabriola Island. This is the kind of thing where we keep saying, we can't have government making these kind of decisions without checking with their populations first. They must talk to the people who elected them.
And I should be more accurate with the position of Gabriola. It's between Vancouver and Nanaimo. It's on the way between the two ferry terminals on the Lower Mainland to the island. So I don't want anybody getting upset because I got them confused with some other Gulf islands.
Oh, that's okay. It's absolutely beautiful, very similar to other Gulf islands. I had friends who grew up on Hornby and Quadra and Texada and the whole bit, and Gabe's very beautiful.
And I'm sure the 8 kids there would appreciate the skateboard park.
It's apparently quite a relaxed atmosphere. I have a friend who works for the volunteer fire department sometimes. Island life, right? And again, everybody wants nice things, but we really, really, really need to decide if these are needs right now.
Kris, how can people get a hold of you if they want more information or would like to comment on some of the stories we covered?
We would love to hear from them, and we also would encourage them to use our website because we have a lot of resources there so that no matter how you vote, we don't care. If it's NDP, Green, Conservative, Liberal, whatever, that's fine. We encourage you to be active, though. So if there's something happening in your local municipality, we want you to speak up and to write that letter, to make that phone call, to contact your local representatives. And we have tools on our website to do that, including how to write a great letter. So go to our website, taxpayer.com, and from there you can do that or even just send us a comment as well.
Kris, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for caring so much about BC.
My guest has been Kris Sims, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Her website, taxpayer.com. Kris, can we give your email?
That would be great. Yeah, it's the letter K-SIMS, so K-S-I-M-S at taxpayer.com. I'd love to hear from you.
If you have any questions for Kris or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.